So this is the 23:30 hours GMT, London, UK, Thursday, 23rd of February 2023, edition of the Baby Angel Geronimo editions, KhoodeelaarTV Television Channel. This is part B, and this is part B of the extended essay that we are doing in updating our commentary based on the facts of the behavior of the UK state in relation to the robbery that the state has been perpetrating against the British by birth British citizen Shamima Begum. And the Fleet Street coverage or cover ups of the ruling by the so called commission, immigration tribunal or commission, we shall come to the explanation or diagnosis of that stupidly named outlet or outfit is being covered and covered up in the daily papers that appeared on 23rd of February 2023. The 23rd of, and this is the, I hope I can put this before the camera because the camera, this is the Rupert Murdoch scum, and it's, let's see if we can get it standing that way. Well, it says, no, they're saying that Shamima Begum should accept no for an answer. And this is the theme of the scum. Now, in doing the preview, so called, on the Sky News channel, fronted by Anna Botting, Michael Gove's so called former wife, and the Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vanity commented on this one that Anna Botting asked her to comment on, this entry about the item in the I newspaper. And Sarah Vanity, of course, made a number of absolutely outrageously factually untruthful and untrue and unsubstantiated assertions. First of all, she accused Shamima Begum of having done these things, having done the atrocities. Now, the worst, in the so called words of Sarah Vanity, that Shamima Begum had committed was to not condemn the bombing in Manchester and to come across as unfazed by some sites or alleged or reported sightings of the victims of the murders by the so called ISIS. Now, as we have said, and we must make it very clear, this campaign, we do not have any access in any way, any shape or form to the family, biological family, social family, whatever, of Shamima Begum. We have no contacts, never had contacts, never sought any contacts with anyone related to her anywhere on the face of the earth. Anything we say on this program, in this essay, or anything we have said in the last year since we began talking about her, is entirely linked with access available online, available in public to anyone else in the world. Our main concern is twofold. One is that she, as a child, along with her two friends, immediate friends, Khadija Sultana and Amira Abbasi, those three children were allowed to be exposed to whatever influences, grooming, whatever they were exposed to, that led to their being found reportedly in February 2015 in in Syria, according to reports that we have seen. The first time we saw any reports about them, the first time we ever became aware of their physical existence on the face of the earth, was after we saw the news. So before that, there were children entitled to protection under the program called Child Safeguarding Children Duty, and they were not protected. Now, in the report on the Daily Telegraph of Thursday, in the report on the Daily Telegraph of Thursday, the 23rd of February 2023, one of the judges is reported to have said that the police, meaning the Metropolitan Police, let's say, the social services, the local council, no, the words used in that report, the local council and the police, local council, and the school, the former Dainford Boys School, they failed. They failed to stop Shamima Begum from leaving the country, that is the United Kingdom, when they left, which was, by all accounts, up to now, this account has not been altered by any updates anywhere, in February 2015. Now, our question is, what did the judge actually get presented with in terms of the behavior, the facts, and the factual contacts between these children and the local council? Because nothing has been published as to any contact, if any, that took place or might have taken place between Tower Hamlets, which is the local council meant, and these children. Now, parallel to the, there's a news story concerning these children, there has been in operation a thing which was introduced under the last Labour fronted UK government called Prevent. And Prevent was invented, of course, on solely kind of racist and anti-Muslim agenda to prevent Muslims. Let's put it that way, prevent Muslims, full stop. But the review conducted by the notorious liar and criminal propagandist Nazi sympathizer, Nazi ideology sympathizer, let's say, or Nazi ideology appeaser, William Shawcross, has not really explained the evidence of the operation of the Prevent thing in preventing anything. I mean, the superficial thing was that the Prevent would prevent radicalization, whatever that meant. So all these reviews and all these kind of opinions expressed by the likes of Sarah Vanity, these are not helping the cause of keeping, let's say, society safe from the, quote, terrorists or extremists or radicals. Why? Because they're not telling the truth. And the first thing they are not telling society, the public, who don't have the platforms like platforms that are available, made available to the likes of Sarah Benity, is what are the actual state agencies aware of as happening, and who are the perpetrators, the culprits that are doing the wrongs, the plottings, and whatever else. From time to time, there appears news in the mainstream saying that the police or the state have foiled, that is, they have stopped the occurrence of an act of terror. That's all. They really don't go into the actual evidence. And they cannot correlate because they don't have the connections factually. These things with ordinary people. So nobody knows where any plot might be taking place. Now, going back to the role of the judges, so called, Patrick Coburn, one of the sons of the Coburn that used to be on Private Eye, um, Patrick Coburn is one of the commentators that writes in this publication, The Eye. And can I get that piece? That is him. Well, it's very small. That is him, his piece in The Eye today, that is Thursday. That's Patrick Coburn. And Patrick Coburn is saying, let's check that one when we actually can do that, if we can get the camera anywhere near the pages. So this is starting at 12 minutes 19. This is, and at 12 minutes. And what Patrick Coburn is saying is that this dubious overreaction plays into hands of ISIS. Now, Patrick Coburn are among the less ignorant, let's put it this way, less ignorant of the contemporary current kind of list of Fleet Street journalists. And they have shown consistently an ability to get at least some of the facts less wrong about Muslims, about the so-called IS, and of course about the general state of the world. So therefore, based on that, Patrick Coburn's piece, I'll come to that. Now, when Anna Botting started her edition of presenting the so-called Sky News press preview, referring to the papers of Thursday, the 23rd of February, but broadcasting during the late evening of 22nd of February 2023, when the newspapers were available to them. When she did that, she first asked a question about Shamima Begum, and she put the question to Sarah Benity. Now, Sky News has already been in the news itself about stupid behavior, insensitive behavior, irresponsible behavior that has actually added to the distress of the parents and the family of Nicola Bulley. Because Ofcom, which is hardly alive ever, is showing its relevance by making a token series of gestures. And one of the gestures has been to contact Sky News, in addition to contacting ITV, and asking for an explanation. Now, that is not the behavior of a regulator at all, but that is what Sky News has been lumbered with. And Sky News can wriggle out because Ofcom is a notional outfit. It doesn't really regulate, it doesn't really penalize, it doesn't really hold to account any of the broadcasters. It's the laissez faire all over the place. That is, leave them alone. Laissez faire is a French expression mainly used in economic studies or studies of economics, but laissez faire actually applies to everything that goes on under the auspices of the United Kingdom state. What has happened that she asked Sarah Vanity to comment on this piece or the coverage about the ruling as covered as printed in the I newspaper of Thursday the 23rd of February 2023. And Sarah Vanity kind of delivered like a machine, like a robot, like a zombie, a series of prepared kind of slogans that had no factual basis at all. She said she, that is Shamima Begum, did these things. But at no point did Anna Botting, who had the duty to ask her to state what things Sarah Vanity was referring to, Anna Botting failed to do that. Then she went on to refer to Shamima Begum having been asked about what she, Shamima Begum, being in captivity in Syria, had thought about Manchester bombing. Now, nobody knows, and it has not been published, as to what the physical conditions were in which Shamima Begum was sitting and dealing with this question coming from a mainstream British journalist. And her response was whatever she said didn't include her expressing any condemnation or regret or remorse. Now, remorse is only possible if she had done it. Regret is only possible if she had done anything to do with the bombing. And yet, Anna Botting didn't stop Sarah Vanity from accusing, because that is an accusation as direct as it comes. That is an accusation made against Shamima Begum that she, in effect, was part of the bombing of the arena in Manchester. There is no evidence, absolutely none. And then she said something else, which is something I'll access. I can't see this in front of me, but I'll search for it and see what Sarah Vanity said. Okay, let's see if we can find the Sarah Vanity. Well, this is a part of our preview, so it's not the. Okay, let's go for these atrocities. Sarah Vanity says that Shamima Begum did atrocities. As we said yesterday, and as we said today in the first edition, that is Part A. There is no evidence that Shamima Begum did any act that could be called an atrocity. It's a noun. The noun of atrocity is an extremely cruel act, a horrid act of injustice. And the second noun is to the quality or state of being atrocious, enormous wickedness, extreme criminality or cruelty. Now, by all criteria of broadcasting standards, Anna Botting failed to stop Sarah Vanity from using that term and concept against Shamima Begum. And she failed to demand that Sarah Vanity justify by actual citation an actual event that objectively constituted atrocity. And Anna Botting failed to say to Sarah Vanity that she had failed to link Shamima Begum to any act of atrocity, extreme cruel act anywhere. But there is this double kind of line. There are two kind of versions of Shamima Begum's statements running in the media. One is that she is being alleged to have changed her stance in order to kind of appear in the podcast that she has been given by the BBC and in the so-called documentary made by Joshua Baker. This one was intended, according to the interpretation by the Fleet Street kind of commentators, that Shamima Begum changed her stance or changed her statements because she wanted to come across as not a monster, come across as somebody who didn't do anything really wrong, etc., in the run up to the ruling or the hearing that took place in November 2022 before the so-called Immigration Tribunal or Commission. Now, this piece by Cahal Milmo in the I newspaper is headed, this item is headed, "From London Schoolgirl to ISIS Bride and Security Threat." Now, this is a contradictory statement which Anna Botting should have actually mentioned, should have actually clarified and stated. Because ISIS Bride is not logical step from being a trafficked object of sexual exploitation. She was being trafficked to be used for the sexual gratification of a number of people, whoever they were or might be. And she is not a bride because the consent simply did not exist, was not available to her. And she could not possibly give a consent to a marriage after a meeting of 10 to 15 minutes with effectively her rapist. And so therefore these headings And the items that are contained underneath these headings and the contents are absolutely inconsistent and contradictory on an ordinary reading, on a sophisticated, detailed reading, on any level. So the Sky News, when it is being condemned effectively, not by the Ofcom itself, but by the evidence that has been made public about its intruding into the family of Nicholas Bully, would be expected to have taken care to get its facts right and to be rigorous. But it wasn't. Anna Boting completely failed, and she went along with Sarah Vanity. When it came to the comment by Kevin McGuire, who was the other side of the two-member panel on this edition, Kevin McGuire just listed a number of things, but he didn't actually rigorously refute or come across as wanting to refute what Sarah Bennett was saying. What he did put on there on the broadcast was that one of the things he said was this Tim Farron, the former leader of the Lib Dems, who had said that if Shamima Begum's name was Sharon from Manchester, and if she were white, she would not have been treated in that way, which Tim Farron made to the pair, John Sopel and Emily Maitlies. Notice how I'm pronouncing her second name, Emily Maitlies, not Matlees. And the Maitlies is a connection to the lies she perpetrated in 2004 in a broadcast when she was one of the presenters on the BBC BBC London News. And we shall go into a completely separate series on Emily Maitlies lying in 2004. And going back to yesterday, that is Wednesday night's edition of the Sky News press preview of the papers of Thursday, which is coming to an end in 3 minutes. The presentation was completely wrong and it was irresponsible, and it contributed seriously to the misinformation about the whole thing. Now, as I said at the beginning, I don't know this child. I would not have known this child at all until she was part of the news in February 2015. So when I became aware of her existence, I started publishing comments about the role the child safeguarding children duties owed to her and other children by the local council, Tower Hamlets Council. Now, I made that point years before this judge apparently kind of in passing referred to the failure of the local council. This is the first time. This is the first time that the local council, they're not even naming. I mean, in the interpreted version of the ruling, the Telegraph of Thursday, 23rd of April, February 2023, doesn't refer to Tower Hamlets Council by name. It says local council. By not naming Tower Hamlets, they are also allowing Tower Hamlets Council criminals exoneration by omission of the name. Because as soon as Tower Hamlets Council is named, all the publicly available and publicly accessible contents become relevant and they come up. If you search under the term local council, it doesn't bring up Tower Hamlets, does it? But if you search under Tower Hamlets Council, it brings up independently, not on Tower Hamlets Council's website, but independently, all kinds of references. Most of those references, including references to what the then Secretary of State for Communities, Eric Pickles, said about Tower Hamlets Council, what the Price Waterhouse Coopers accountants firm appointed by Eric Pickles in April 2014 reported to Eric Pickles about the financial misconduct carried out by the Tower Hamlets Council as fronted by the crook Luthuraman in the post of mayor. Now, crook is not my word. Crook is the word and the terminology used by the electoral court president or the electoral commissioner, Richard Morey, who heard the evidence in relation to the petition made by four entitled petitioners against Luthuraman's so-called election in May 2014. Now, remember that proceedings of the hearing of the petition claims against Luthuraman began in February 2015. Now, notice the coincidence. February 2015 is the month also when these children became in the news in the context of their reported appearance in Syria to join the so called ISIS. Now, in the ordinary world, in the common ordinary world, what happens when there is a disaster? Apart from people who are closely related to the suspected victims or missing people in the disaster and the rescue people, however many are available, other people flee an area of disaster, don't they? Because people don't want to be affected by disaster, and the disaster area only does damage to the life. It's a life destroying event. So, what kind of thinking was at work when these three children voluntarily, that is what the claim is, they volunteer to go to the join the ISIS in a war zone? There is no connection. There is absolutely no connection. Forget about Shamima Begum herself, the other two girls and their Bangladeshi origin families, they would never go there. I mean, they would leave the area if there was a disaster. People even left areas with less severe conditions and severe threats to life and safety. So when these newspapers, the so-called media, say that Shamima Begum went to Syria to join ISIS, what does it, what is the picture, what is the kind of image of this individual, this child that they are painting? What kind of child would go there? Number one. Number two, what kind of local council carrying the duty to safeguard children allow that child to go there, or any of the three children to go there, or any of the four children? Because if you include Sharmina Begum, who went there in December, and according to the now deleted versions of the Wikipedia entry on Sharmina Begum was brainwashed, groomed by, and this is the phrase that was used in the earlier editions of the Wikipedia entry, the Sisters Forum. Who are the Brothers Forum? This forum supposedly is a reference to the Islamic Forum in Europe or of Europe, whatever it is, because it's not a known, publicly known or publicly accountable, publicly accessible outfit. It is one of the several secretive operations that are operated from the complex called the London Muslim Center, based in the Whitechapel Road, not far from the Altabali Park, which is not far from the Aldgate East. Now remember the reference to Aldgate East. I mean, there appears a kind of pattern. Why would anyone do the bombing of the train in the eastern part of the Aldgate station, Aldgate East? Because that is literally next to Brick Lane, next to the Altavali Park, next to the East London Mosque. Now, this is a very easily, clearly, overwhelmingly identifiable location, demographic location of Muslims in the UK, and especially Bangladeshi Muslims in the UK, and more especially Siloti speaking Bangladeshi mainstream, if you like, in the UK. So, why would any so called Muslim allegedly intent on doing damage to non Muslims cause explosions in a Muslim, very Muslim area? Why the fuck? And none of the fucking Muslim leaders in the East London Mosque or anywhere else, none of the creeps has come up with this question. Let's start this logically first at the beginning. Why would a Muslim go to a mosque and murder Muslims saying prayers? I mean, why would that happen? That cannot happen. That cannot happen in logic. That cannot happen in common sense. So take this currently, the world kind of wide headline issue of Ukraine. Would Ukrainians go and murder Ukrainians instead of attacking the Russians? Or would Russians go to Russian homes and murder Russian people? It doesn't happen. And yet, every single so called reported incident of terrorism has been reportedly connected with Muslims doing damage to Muslims. So, how can that be described as against non Muslims? Look at the implication of the propaganda line. If an incident takes place like the overly controversial explosions of the aeroplanes in New York, who are the people that benefit from the propaganda? Who are the people that lose as a result of the propaganda? It's the Muslims who lose, and the non Muslims, supposed targets of the attacks, that benefit. So, no logical construction of Muslim cause would lead to Muslims doing anything that does damage to the Muslims, does it? So, all these questions I'm just putting, not going into item by item every single incident, but that is a logical absurdity. Putting all of those on one side, as if on file, let's look at this schoolgirl thing by Kahal Milmo. Kahal Milmo is one of the twats that has been around for a bit and is a complete fucking idiot. Most of the twats are idiots in Fleet Street. They don't get the facts right, and they don't bother whether they get the names right, the facts right, or the names wrong, the facts wrong, implications wrong. As long as they can act as the polyfillers and the kind of filling the gap, they put the stuff in there. Nowhere in the papers on Thursday was there any reference, really, item by item, to the contents of the ruling. There was nothing in the contents of the coverage, the reports about the actual proceedings. Who said what, who said what, who said what, and they did not do the fact checks. So the majority of the little Englanders who read the tabloids, the most of the media, they have no clue. They are not any better informed as a result of knowing whatever has been published or printed as allegedly being the reports based on the ruling. Because the ruling actually was not a ruling at all. Because apparently, according to the coverage, the commission, which is a perpetration, if you like, because if Shamima Begum is being kind of given the status of an immigrant, doesn't it show the stupidity of the whole thing? This child is not an immigrant. She was born in Britain. So why not give her the opportunity, the platform, the venue to seek her kind of vindication that she is British by birth and she's innocent because she has not committed any crime. And thirdly, that she has not committed any kind of crime by propaganda, by association either. Why was she being given this spot to go to an immigration, special immigration commission? Why? She's not an immigrant. And returning home from an involuntary location, if you like, or involuntary status in Syria, in a location called Al Roj camp, apparently controlled by the Kurds. I mean, how does that make her a migrant or an immigrant? Now, one of the most highly promoted, say, by association with the Guardian and their sort, is an Irish origin, I think, woman solicitor called Gareth Pierce. Now, Gareth Pierce was one of the persons that was interviewed by the British media, by the British television during Wednesday, surrounding or connected with the publication at 10 o'clock on Wednesday of the so called ruling. And Gareth Pierce came across, according to what I have seen on the media about her statements, as not being very optimistic about the legal process, the judicial process. Now, she is a member of the now newly merged or recently merged kind of solicitors business called Barnberg and Pierce. Now, Barnberg is a longer ranging firm of solicitors that actually did business by specializing in claiming to be a liberal kind of champion of civil liberties, etc., claimants, which is absolute bullshit. Because none of the firms of solicitors and none of the solicitors, none of the licensed law traders, including the likes of Gareth Pierce, is acceptable by objective standards as being true advocates of freedom, liberty, and international law, and so on. So none of these people, including Gareth Pierce, as I said, she is the highest profiled individual lawyer, not only because she now has teamed up with Barnberg, but also because she is a woman. And there is a gender based kind of tension in the public life in the UK, which is that if there is a woman holding a post, then regardless of what they actually contribute, whether they are good or bad, that fact, the fact that she is a woman, is given extra positive kind of credibility. So, for that reason, Gareth Pierce has been mentioned, but she's no good because, like the QC woman, who was a representative for baby angel Geronimo, before one of the crooks and liars and shitbags sitting as the High Court judge, doing the job of a stooge for the morons and the evilness of Defra against baby angel Geronimo. That QC, at that time it was a QC, that woman, she would be now KC, because of Brian being the king and the K would be taken from the king. That QC at the time, the licensed barrister, licensed law trader, said things that were not really addressing the fundamental weakness and corruption of the British judiciary, not addressing the fundamental corruption and fundamental unconstitutionality of the British judiciary. So this was not just that particular licensed law trader that let down baby angel Geronimo's case in the court. Baby angel Geronimo remains the most innocent party, the innocent character, the innocent personality targeted by the corrupt judiciary, amongst others, targeted by the corrupt UK state, DEFRA, and led down by the evilness called Boris Johnson, who was incumbent as Prime Minister at number 10 Downing Street at the time, and betrayed and attacked and viciously attacked by the woman called Christine Evilness, Middle Miss. So the judicial corruption, the corruption inherent in the judiciary, the corruption inherent in the absolutely absurdly unfair, unjust composition of the organs of the state, so called, is a perpetual contributory kind of factor that goes against objectively defined justice, the cause of objectively defined justice and claims. So if we take the case of a child born and by birth British citizen, betrayed by the local council, which neglected its own safeguarding children duty, betrayed by the school, whose role is still not publicly accessible during the crucial years that Shamima Begum and the other two girls were attending that school, because that was the period when they were being contacted by whoever brainwashed them, radicalized them, whatever. And the role of the police is not really made public, except that the media doing a stupidly lazy thing by repeating something along the lines that Tasnim Akunje, one of the licensed law traders who has been, according to his kind of claim, a licensed law trader for more than 20 years. Akunji said at an early stage that the police didn't share what they knew about the schoolgirls being groomed. They didn't share with the parents or the family of Shamima Begum. I remember there was this item about her parents not being together. I think this is true because Shamima Begum's mother is resident in the UK. Her father is not always resident, and I don't know the status of her father's current kind of residence at the moment. But he went to Bangladesh. I think it's a place in Sunamganj. It's a greater Sylhet area. And I think he got either married or he started living there. So Shamima Begum's parents were not kind of living together continuously. Even so, Shamima Begum had sibling, or at least one sibling that has become kind of relevant because she kind of came to the media at some stage and held up the picture of Shamima Begum in her, that is the sister's mobile, and that double kind of selfie, if you like, has been circulating ever since. So, whatever the actual number of people making up or constituting the family, the Shamima Begum family, the police did not share whatever they knew with the family. So, the sum total of the judge, Justice Judge J, I think that is the name as mentioned, saying that the police, the school, and the local council did not stop Shamima Begum from leaving the country. Now, that action stop that they failed to enact and carry out suggests and presumes that there would have been coordinated cooperation among these three entities, that is the local council, that is Hrs Council, the school, and the police. And of course, the more important, vital kind of component, the family. So these four entities were not working together. In fact, they were not even aware, let's say publicly aware, or they were not publicly known as being aware of anything going wrong with these three children until it was too late, and until after, well after these children had been reported to have been in Syria. Whatever idiocy and stupidity you attribute or ascribe to any teenager or any children, you cannot expect children to go beyond the lines of, let's say, self protection, survival. You don't expect ordinary people, the majority of the children, to throw themselves before a moving vehicle. That is exactly what these children have done. It's not terrorism, it is self destruction. What the fuck were they doing being allegedly terrorists? I mean, what did they know about anything? And who among the commentators actually believes that these children possess the necessary intellectual capacity, the intellectual maturity, the intellectual sense of responsibility, the intellectual capacity to make judgments by processing information and processing the implication of actions as dangerous as explosions, as mass murder, as decapitating, and all those things. So, whoever worked out, I don't know who these people are and how many times they met together, how many times they actually weighed the evidence, how many times they checked the evidence, how many times they actually bothered about the innocence of this child as a British by birth citizen. But whatever they did is not known. One of the things that still works in the United Kingdom or still enforced in the UK is the thing called client confidentiality. Whoever treated Shamima Begum as their client would claim that they are prevented from the client confidentiality obligation from sharing with the public or sharing with anybody what they actually communicate with their client. That is one of the given. So we don't know what actually took place between Shamima Begum on the one hand and the others that were advising her, advocating for her, allegedly, of course. But whatever did transpire could not make up for the gap that exists in the personality of a child. Even if this child is now 23 years old, this is a child continuing at age 23 the childishness that she was actually exploited about. She never knew from the age 15 when she arrived in the so-called ISIS controlled so-called territory. She has not known the world. She has not known the ordinary interactions that take place in the lives of people who are age 15, 16, 17, up to 23, because she has been confined. The basic human liberties have not been present in her life. So, whatever she has been associated with has been artificial, created by somebody else for her or a number of others for her. So, when these journalists go there, make contacts with her, what do they expect her to know? Unless, of course, Shamima Begum, and I'm introducing another factor, worldwide exclusively introducing another factor, another kind of element. Unless Shamima Begum, yes, I have remembered now what Sarah Benity said. The thing that she said yesterday was that Shamima Begum has done these things, and she included in the things that Shamima Begum had apparently done, atrocious things, was to appear on the front page, front cover of the Times magazine, not the Time magazine of the USA, but the Times, that London Times Saturday magazine, which is what happened 2 weeks ago. And Sarah Vanity was accusing Shamima Begum of appearing on the cover of the Times magazine. How absolutely terrifying. How the fuck did Shamima Begum ever make herself the cover photograph, cover picture on the Times? Next thing Sarah Bennett would say is that Shamima Begum has become the editor of the Times magazine. And then she said she's appearing on television programs. Why the fuck not? She's the subject of interviews being sought by the fucking television channels. You fucking twat. How can that be an offense? So all of these things that Sarah Benity said should have been should have been interrogated, should have been questioned by Anna Botting on the Sky News press preview shit slot. But Anna Botting didn't. Now I'm going to say something even more worldwide exclusive, which is that next thing they would say about Shamima Begum is that she has become, probably since humanity began, the first superhuman, which means that while she was aged 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, whatever, and being raped by this Dutch convert terrorist imposter, she was also becoming a super and super kid, which means that she had multiple capacities that no other single human being has ever been known to have. Which means that while she was having the children, while she was being serially raped and whatever, she was also plotting act or series of acts of terrorism, not only against one identifiable country or target, but any number of targets, including planning and plotting things remotely. That she was actually more kind of intrusive and more powerful than the Chinese balloon that have now appeared 7 years or 8 years since she went to Syria. What the fuck are they going to accuse her of next? And as Tim Farnes said, Shamima Begum is not called Sharon from Manchester. Shamima Begum is a girl from Tower Hamlets in East London from Bethnal Green. And she is called Shamima Begum, and her parents are Bangladeshi Muslims. So she won't be treated as a Sharon from Manchester white girl. Because no Sharon from Manchester white girl has ever been treated in that way, would have been treated in that way. And the Kyle Milmo in the eye. And there are several things wrong with the eye newspaper, because when it started, before the two beards, the Vedh, who owns the Independent Steel, when the eye was also part of the Independent, and they started this eye, and the eye suddenly proved to be a kind of winner in terms of selling copies, in comparison with the the Independent, which didn't sell copies. When they started doing that, what was not mentioned and admitted in the commentary about the sudden success of a outlet that wasn't controlled by the Murdochs or the Daily Mail was that the contents of the I newspaper, as it became, were significantly less dishonest than the contents of the rivals. And that was the actual selling point. Now, this twat calling himself the editor, what is the twat's name? Fucking Duffy, the daft fucking Duffy. This twat doesn't understand the value. This cunt doesn't understand the value of telling the truth. So what he has done with the Shamima Begum kind of report after the ruling by this commission is to mess up the contents. And I think he has interfered with Patrick Coburn's kind of presentation, which is the only piece that actually has reservations about the judges. Now, this heading is wrong, the other one on the other side of the two-page spread, which is pages 10 and 11. On page 10, the first one, the heading says, Shamima's fight nowhere near over, say her lawyers. Now, that is quite an ambitious heading, but underneath, the lawyers are not saying anything that remotely justifies that kind of confidence. So I'll come to that in a minute. I'm just checking about the kind of ability to read the contents while I'm doing this broadcast, because I'm dealing with the absent holder for this computer device that I'm using. I can't put it on a holder. I'm putting it on my lap while I'm trying to hold the paper on the other hand. Let's check if I can find a way to access that particular piece on page 10 of the eye, and see if we can check. Okay, so it's a complete incompetent kind of piece. So they're saying at the bottom of the paragraph, Daniel Farnar of Bernberg Pierce. Now, Whether he belongs to the Pierce side or the Barnberg side is not material. The law firm said the admission of potential trafficking and state failings meant the Home Secretary Suella Braverman should revisit the case. In a statement, Mr. Farner said, the outcome is that there is now no protection for a British child trafficked out of the UK if the Home Secretary invokes national security. Regrettably, this is a lost opportunity to put into reverse a profound mistake and a continuing injustice. The Home Office said it was pleased the court had found in favor of the government's position, adding, the government's priority remains maintaining the safety and security of the UK, and we will robustly defend any decision made. Devyani Prabhat, a professor at University of Bristol Law School. Now, Devyani sounds like an Indian name. Said the case raised questions about who in the United Kingdom took responsibility for the failures of the state in the run-up to her departure. Devyani said it was strange to see an immigration court grappling with trafficking and acknowledging its effects on a minor and then setting it aside on national security grounds. A challenge is likely to be lodged with the Court of Appeal, Ms. Prabhat said, adding that further challenges were complicated due to the wide discretion given to Home Secretaries and the quantity of evidence that is not publicly available. Now, this is the thing. The heading, as I said, is misleading because it doesn't come anywhere near rigorously examining the facts. And this Daniel Farnier's statement that they've quoted is completely incomplete, if you like, and it's not anywhere near adequate. And this Devyani Prabhat from the Bristol Law School partly recognizes the limitations, but she still doesn't say, Devyani Prabhat doesn't say what we have been saying alone. We alone have been saying on the facts, not because we fantasized, but because there is no evidence, there is no record in the what is called the jurisprudence, the published and accessible record of the reasoning for decisions made by the judiciary. There is no evidence that actually interrogates, that is, examines, scrutinizes the UK's. Notice what we are saying is all new. This is nothing to do with the contents of the newspapers on Thursday. There is nothing there of the kind that I'm speaking. And what I'm saying here is that the UK remains active. That is to say, the signatures remain active. Actively signed up to hundreds of international treaties and charters and declarations and statements. Most of those charters that relate to constitutionality, judicial behavior, are always among the targets of attacks and undermining by the conservatives, by the racists, and by the likes of the current newly appointed deputy chair of the Conservative Party, the criminal who wants all kinds of bad things to be brought back to the state's capacity and power to inflict on people, ordinary people in this country. Lee Anderson. What has happened is that none of the presentations, as interpreted by the reports in the papers on Thursday, the 23rd of February 2023, nor in the lead up to the presentation, none of the briefing, if you like the Barnberg peers or whatever, has even acknowledged the existence of these treaties, has not even acknowledged the existence of the treaties and the duties these treaties impose on the signatory state, which the UK is. And so, therefore, in the reports, there is no reference to the implication. Devani Prabhat has referred to this, but she has also admitted that there is no publicly accessible access to the contents of various things that are available, that are being said, that are being kind of put on the table during the proceedings, during the decision making, but not accessible to the public. And what we are saying is that not only that, despite the fact that the UK keeps remaining as signatory to the international treaties and obligations and conventions, etc., the UK never, ever, the UK state never, ever refers to these international conventions, treaties, declarations, statements, whatsoever. So it's like a little England world, which means that the world only exists in England. Outside of England, there is no world. That's the mindset that actually dominates the likes of the people who support anything that the very craftily operating Suella Braverman issues. She says the worst things that the likes of Nigel Farage and the various racists would say, they would not bother with international. There is no such thing as international. And Lee Anderson has said the worst things possible that he could say, etc. So we shall continue this essay into the next part, which is part C, whenever we are able to broadcast that. Because of time, we are going to end this particular one, the part B. Part B is dated the 23rd of February 2023. This is ending at 0042 hours GMT on Friday, the 24th of February 2023.